I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a 7-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Today on Growth and Grit, we're talking to my dad, who I don't even know that you realize you've probably helped so many people in business because I've said your quotes to people and told them things that I've learned growing up. But before we get into that, just a little bit of history on your life. Your dad owned a business.
Yep, he owned a bakery.
Yep. And when did you start working there?
When I was in 8th grade.
And what was your job? What did you do?
I fried donuts. I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and fried donuts until 7:30, and then I had a half an hour to get ready for school and got home and went off to school. And many times, a lot of my friends liked the smell that I had on my on my clothes, so I had to always wash my hair because that was the main thing. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and it was my one-on-one time with my dad, which I didn't see him much because he would go off at 9 o'clock at night, and he would get done at 9 in the morning. 6 days a week, which is a 72-hour work week. And I didn't realize how long that was until I got into the workforce and worked 40 hours. And occasionally I'd work 8 hours in overtime. And man, that's a long work week. And he did that for 30 years. It's crazy.
And what do you think was something that allowed him to stay in business that long? Like, because a lot of businesses don't always stay around, right? There's like a high turnover rate in new business. Obviously his work ethic was great, right? Because he worked every night. Did he ever take a day off?
Just Sunday. And I can only remember one time when he was sick. He had a fever, and my mom implored him to stay home, and he slept in till midnight, and he went back into work. And yeah, he had a great work ethic. The guy was amazing. And it just seems like the older you get, the more you appreciate how hard he worked for 6 kids and a wife. But we were all involved with the bakery, every one of us. We had my youngest sister was, when she was born and she was going to kindergarten, my oldest brother was graduating from high school. So we had a big gap in there, but we're all involved with the bakery.
And when did he sell it? How old were you when he finally sold that?
I was 18 years old. I was a senior in high school. And when he told me he was going to sell it, I pretty much knew the business, and I pled with him that I said, just sell it to me, because it was a good business, and it was the only bakery in town of a town of 3,000. And we always had loyal customers. And when at the time I thought he was selfish because he said, Pat, I wouldn't do that to you. I would never do that to you. And I thought, what are you going to do to me? But now I can realize that it would have been a really hard life to do that.
It probably would have stuck you in that town for the next 40 years too.
Not only that, all those work hours that you had to put in. Because
overnight, especially, right? Because it's not during the day.
Right. And by not being home at night, my mom had to take care of all the duties of putting the kids to bed. So she really pulled her weight.
Really, he worked kind of like 24 hours, because if he worked from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m., let's say, and then he slept when he was home,
right?
It was kind of like she was just by herself the whole time.
Yeah. The only time we really saw my dad was Saturday night when he woke up, and we spent a lot of quality time with him. It was a ritual that we would make popcorn at night and sit with my dad, and we'd bring him popcorn, and we'd watch a movie or shows or whatever. And then Sunday we'd watch football.
Yeah.
And Sunday was the only time that we were really together as a family. And that was a strict rule that we had in our house. We'd go to church, come home, and my mom would make dinner, noon or 1 o'clock dinner, and we'd all sit down, and we were all together as a family. It was really a nice time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So you and mom raised 2 kids who are, I would say, pretty successful. You know, Bennett does his own thing and is great at what he does. And I learned how to run a business early on and kind of followed in those footsteps of wanting to run a business and having kind of that entrepreneurial or business owner itch and hit some success like in my early 20s where I was actually able to stop running a business when I was 29 and become a full-time consultant on all the income that I had made. Which I know you and I haven't probably talked about that very much, but you didn't ever really question what I was doing or how hard I was working or any of that stuff, which was really helpful to me. What do you think is the reason why some parents or some people try to get too involved in like the careers of their children?
Well, from early on, I had confidence in you and Bennett, and there was, for me, it was really no reason for me to question what you were doing because everything that you did in life, all through high school, and the sports you played, the show choir that you were in, Bennett was in marching band. You all took ownership of every activity that you were in, and you excelled in it. So there really was no reason for me to question what you were going to do because I knew anything that you did, you'd be all right.
So here's the first tip, because we're going to go over 5 different like mentalities, because I think that you can't really control the direction your kids end up going in. Like they're going to make independent choices and have free will and whatever. But I think as parents, something that I think you can do is kind of develop the mindset of like how they think about the challenges when they hit or how they handle something when it happens. But you don't know what's going to happen to them or what choices they're going to make, but you can help them figure out how to navigate whatever it is. So these are just like 5 mentalities that I picked up through the years. And again, like I have examples of you showing this and maybe telling a story about it, but these might be things that you just didn't even realize you were doing.
Well, this ought to be interesting.
So the first one is that no job is beneath you, right? Like you're never too good to do like a dirty job.
Right.
I think we really saw that. And like, I remember you being a janitor at one point, or like you had to like pack, what was like skinned cats or something like that?
Yeah,
like,
that was a NASCO. Yeah.
It was like you went from like one job where it just wasn't the right, what the career trajectory wasn't like where we needed it to be. So then you went, instead of scaling up, you scaled down for a minute and you just took a job that seemed crazy, but maybe the work hours were better, or like tell us about that job or like your philosophy on being a janitor. Cause I think that's what it was, right?
Yeah. At that point, my folks were both custodians at a high school and I knew that was hard work. And I went from a manager at a resort that was making really good money. And it wasn't working out for me just because it was very restrictive as far as the kids go. And I had to step away from that job because in my eyes, you kids needed more freedom and you needed to do more things rather than being restricted. And so I went from that job and I took a job that at that time paid $15 an hour. And I went in with a suit to interview for the job and probably was overdressed. And there were 3 other people and I got the job. And the lady that hired me said that you presented yourself as somebody that wanted the job. So I did get it. And I went, it was tough. I had to clean the whole facility. I would get in at 5 o'clock in the morning, clean all the bathrooms. But from doing that, I got a lot of positive response from the people who were there. I was very meticulous in how I clean things. And they said, boy, I can't believe the bathrooms are this clean and it's never been that way. So that made me feel good. And within 3 months, they didn't want to take me out of the custodial job, but they wanted to advance me because they didn't want to lose me. So they gave me a packing supervisor job. And just like that, they increased my wages by $5 an hour. And at that point, I was in charge of 43 packers. And my boss said to me, do you have any problems with working with women? I said, no. And I thought that was kind of an odd question because 40 out of the 43 packers were women. And I found out that women have a tendency to tattle on each other and tell me about somebody's not doing their job and this and that. But I never really took it with a grain of salt. I just figured if you do your job, you're going to be okay. And you never want to be the person that passes those kind of gossips along. So I got along really well with them. And it was kind of a stepping stone job that I was hoping that I could get back on the railroad again, because that paid twice as much as what I was making. And finally, I was actually the first person that the railroad rehired in that business. But the reason they rehired me is they needed people and they knew I was a good worker. They want to hire me back if they didn't think that. So it all worked out.
Number 2, don't sweat the small stuff. And like a lot of times it's all small stuff, you know, like if it's not going to matter in 10 years. But I think like watching the evolution of jobs helped me see that, because I saw you get laid off a few times. I saw us have to move states. I saw us have to do all this different stuff. And I think we did that with like a pretty good attitude.
Absolutely.
It wasn't easy.
No.
You know, it was challenging and sad and different things. But I think like not getting too hung up on
what could have
temporary issues,
I
think is something that I learned.
Yeah, when you're getting laid off from the railroad and making $125 a week, that's just not going to cut it. But the good thing about the railroad is they'll find you a new job around in a different part of the country or close. And it just so happened, being in Wisconsin, the next job opportunity was going to be in Arizona. And I just never flew on a plane ever when I was 35 years old. Got on a plane by myself and flew out to Arizona, looked at the job, looked at the area, and they were offering me good money. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity for me to move up, because it wasn't the normal railroad job that I was having. It was a foreman position. And what was nice about it is I only had 4 people that I had to work with, and 2 were very young, 2 were very old, set in their ways. And I didn't go in there preaching to the older guys that this is how you have to do it. I just let them make their own mistakes. I knew what mistakes they were making, and I would come out and say, oh, well, that didn't work very well, did it? And they would say, no, but this is the way we've always done it. And I would say, well, if you've always done it this way, it's not working out for you. So we got to do something else. And I know how to do it, and I'll show you how to do it so you can do it this way next time. And they liked me for doing that, and they respected me for doing that and how I handled them, rather than barking at them. You got to treat people with respect and show them. And it all worked out. When I left there, I was really good friends with all 4 of them. It was really a hard decision to make, but there again, I wasn't afraid to move on.
And I think you've worked for some great people, and you've worked for some more challenging leadership, I think. What do you think is one of the like best qualities in a leader? And what do you think, because you've worked for a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, what do you think is like, if you see this type of leader, this is not good?
I would have to say that the people you're working with, you got to make a connection with them, number one. And by making a connection with them, I mean, you've got to show them that you know what you're doing, for one thing. You can't fake it. You got to show them what you know, and do it in a way that they understand it, break it down so they understand it. And by that, you gain respect. And working with some people where they would bark at their employees and yell at them and tell them that they were doing it all wrong and not really give them any advice on how to do it, saying they should know how to do it, they lost all respect. And respect is everything when you're working with people.
Yeah,
it really is. So, I mean, there's a right way and a wrong way to do things.
Yeah. So then the next thing, this is something that you may or may not remember. So when you were coaching wrestling, not when like way back, but when you were doing like the assistant coaching things when I was in high school. I don't know if you remember this, but I came to you and I hated soccer. Remember I was playing soccer?
Yeah, I do.
And I just hated it because it was just so much running. And I would just hide in the bathroom when they would do those mile run-ins and hope that they didn't notice I was gone. And then I would just join back in at the end.
That I didn't know.
You didn't know that?
No. I did not know that.
I was like, how can I get out of this? I would just like hide and then go into the bathroom and then just join back in, which was pretty smart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Creative. But I just hated it. But anyways, I told you I wanted to quit, and you were like, "Look, if you're gonna quit something, you gotta quit on a good day. You can't quit on a bad day, because if you quit on a bad day, you're only emotional, and you have to if you wanna quit something, quit on a good day." And I've shared that story with thousands of people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one thing that sticks with everybody because it's so true, and it's like so many people quit emotionally because they
Mm-hmm.
just had a bad day.
Yeah.
So where did you get that philosophy from?
Well, I played a lot of sports in my life. Played baseball, football. I was in track. But the hardest sport I ever played or participated in was wrestling, because you're one on one, and you can't blame anybody for losing or winning except yourself. And it's a really hard physical sport, and you're dealing with weight. You got to be on time with, or you got to be accurate with your weight. You got to really watch your diet. And that all comes from discipline. I wasn't very disciplined in high school when it came to um, losing weight. Back then, you couldn't. I would come in every weekend or every day on Monday and weigh 138 pounds, and I had to get down to 120. So I had five days to lose 18 pounds. And being a young man and growing at the time, it was really hard on me. But I was disciplined enough that by the third day I wasn't eating, and by the fourth day I wasn't drinking. But I made weight, never not made weight. But I knew that wasn't the way to do it. So when I got into coaching, this is what I stressed to my wrestlers. I told them my story. I said, it's not good for your body, and it's not good for your mental capacity or anything like that. You've got to, when the wrestling is over on the weekend and you go home, be disciplined in what you eat. So when you come in, you don't have to lose all the weight that I did. And it really made these wrestlers understand, because I had been there and they understood it. And by doing that, we really had some good wrestlers that didn't have to cut a lot of weight. And the 2 years that I coached, we were 18 wins and 2 losses, and we really had a good team. I had a good foundation to come into, but it was my hometown, and I was representing it, and I was really proud to be able to do that. And that was something that I really could hang my hat on, that we did really well. But from that experience, believe me, there were a lot of people that wanted to quit, because it is a hard sport. And I can tell you that one of our state champions from Lake Mills, when I was going to school, he was a 185 pounder, and we had a heavyweight. And those two would wrestle each other all the time in practice, because there were the only two people that were big. And the heavyweight would just beat up on this 185 pounder. And there was one point during Christmas vacation that he said, "I can't do it anymore. He's beating up on me. I want to quit." Well, we all talked to him and convinced him to stay in. And he ended up winning state champion that year, undefeated.
Wow.
But taking that beating was something that he could.
He challenged himself so much against that other guy that it made him better.
He did challenge himself, and he'll forever be an undefeated state champion from Lake Mills.
Wow.
He did a great job.
Have you ever seen people that have a ton of talent but just absolutely no ambition?
Absolutely.
Isn't that so frustrating?
It is. And I think a lot of that's because they've had talent their whole life and everything's come easy for them. But I had a wrestler he played basketball his first 2 years, and his dad was a wrestler, and he wanted me to talk to his son to come out for wrestling. And finally, I was able to. And his junior year, he took a pounding right at the beginning of the year, but he was learning and learning and learning. And by that time, the end of the year came rolling around, he was a conference champion, and he beat some of the guys that beat him during the year. And the following year, he was a state champion. And he had a lot of speed. He was a big man. He weighed 300 pounds.
Wow.
And
High school?
In high school.
Wow.
And he could only weigh 285. And so he had to cut 15 pounds, which he had to lose. But a lot of people didn't think that he had the discipline to do it, but he did. And he was one of the fastest guys on his feet as far as running goes at that size. And he got a football scholarship But there again, he had all this talent and everything came easy for him, that he was a starting lineman for a football team his freshman year. And by the time he was a sophomore year, he flunked out because everything just kind of came too easy for him.
Never had to work for it.
No, it was a shame. It was really a shame because he had a lot of potential and he never used it. So I've seen it.
Yeah.
And yet there's people that don't have the potential and they work hard for it. And they succeed because their heart is big.
Yeah. They've got more grit, right?
Yeah,
They've got more intensity.
absolutely. Yeah.
The next one, number 4, is that like, just like your reputation of being kind and helping people really matters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes people feel like you have to be, especially in business, like you have to be kind of a jerk in order to grow. And I don't think that that's true. I think that you can be really kind and help people and have people's best interests at heart. And that actually gets you further. Maybe it takes longer, but it gets you just as far as somebody else. And I think that was like I think probably you got that from your dad, right? Where he gave away a lot of
He did.
goods, in the journey. But I think that translates generationally, like how kind you are and how much you focus on actually helping people versus just like, what can you do for me before I do anything for you? It's kind of like, well, let me help you out and I know it'll come back eventually.
Well, there's takers and givers in this world. I know that. And I've seen plenty of both. But my dad and mom really didn't have to tell me to be that way. I just learned by example.
Yeah.
And little did I realize at my mom's funeral, I had to end up giving the eulogy, which was one of the hardest things in my life to do. But after I was done, all these people came up and told the people that were at the funeral what she did without me even knowing about it, with a lot of us not knowing about it, because she never really announced it. She just went ahead and did it. And like I said, it's an example of two parents that sacrificed and did a lot of things for other people and not really telling us to do it, but showing us. And that's the best way to learn, is to see it from somebody you respect, especially your parents. My mom and dad, they gave a lot to the community. And I think every one of the kids have kind of followed in their footsteps. I got a lot of good brothers and sisters that do the same thing, as you know.
Yeah.
And
it's really incredible, like the amount of, and just the amount of generosity and kindness and whatever that you just see, right? Like I asked Eddie for one thing and he puts 7 things in the mailbox.
Yeah.
Says it's all free, just take it.
And Claudia,
oh my gosh, yeah, Claudia sends me something like every month and makes all these binders for my kids and just does it because she's like, oh, I love to do it. It's not like it's a burden or she's stressed out about it or whatever. She just wants to do it because she likes to.
She likes to, and it makes you, as you know, giving always makes you feel better than taking.
Yeah.
And that's kind of our motto in our house. It's always been that way. And when I go and I help my youngest sister, Mary, do anything on the farm, it's like me being on vacation. She just bends over backwards to make me comfortable. And she shows such appreciation with me helping her that I just love going there and helping her. Not because she's given me so much, but when you do things for people, you want a little bit of appreciation. You don't need a lot, but by them showing me that makes me want to come back and help them.
Right.
And that's how it works. You gotta put it out there, and you don't do it because you think you're going to get something back. You do it because you know you're helping somebody.
Yeah.
And that's the bottom line.
Right.
Yeah.
The last thing that I have here is that you can always learn something new. I think that there's a lot of times in life where you have to learn something new and you have to develop in some way. And I think it's good to always do that. I know you took all these different jobs and have done all these different scenarios and traveled the world for different things. And we were talking earlier about how you went to Sweden and Finland and, worked for a company that it was like pharmaceutical inspection, right?
Right.
And I remember that, but also then you retired and now you just help people get better deals on handyman work. You know what I mean? It's like, so you're taking kind of this compilation of all the things that you've learned and you kind of like created your own sole proprietorship or self-employment by just helping people that maybe normally would have to pay 30, 40, $50,000 and you can do it for $100 or $800 or whatever it is, which is awesome. Um,
hmm
but like, what's your thought process on that? Like, how did you come to that mentality of just, you should always try to learn something new?
I've always been handy, and that's always helped me. And I was never afraid to learn something new. And having all these different jobs, I had enough confidence in myself that everything that I did, I ended up acing it only because I had confidence in myself. I never got down thinking, oh, I can't do this. I just thought there's a lot of people doing what I'm doing and they're doing it correctly. So I can do it. And taking all these different jobs and traveling the world and meeting different people and finding out that people are basically good everywhere you go. But doing the job that I'm doing now, fortunately, where I'm at, fortunately and unfortunately, there's widows and people that are alone and they can't do certain things around the house by themselves. And I always feel like I can come in and tell them my motto, and a lot of the people that I work for say the first thing that you say to me is, "Oh, I can do that," and I do. I take care of it, and I look at things that people have had estimates on, and it's an astronomical amount of money. And I'm thinking, and I can do that easily for a tenth of the amount that you're going to be paying somebody to do it, and do it just as good. And if I don't know exactly how to do it, I'll look it up on YouTube and tutorialize myself and figure out how to do it correctly. And by doing that, I've created a good business base where I'm at now, and it keeps expanding because word of mouth goes a long way.
Yeah.
And the one thing that my dad taught me was you can do a million good things, and once you do something that's not good, that's going to spread faster than the good things that you do.
Yeah.
So you always got to make sure that there's not that one person that you do a bad job for, because that word gets around real quick.
Yeah.
So I really pride myself into going above and beyond. And for example, I did a painting job for a lady and her husband, and while I was there, they kept saying, "Oh, just one more thing. Can you do this?" And I started calling him Columbo because it was always, "Oh, could you do this? Could you do that?" Yeah, I can do that. And one day she called me up and she said, "My umbrella broke on my table. The wind caught it and broke it. Can you fix it?" I said, "Well, I've never done it, but I would like to take it apart and see what I can do to fix it." And it took me about 3 hours to tear it all apart and figure out what was wrong with it. And I fixed it. And it was a good experience for me because now I can do that. And she immediately called me up and said, "Thank you so much. What do I owe you?" And I said, "You don't owe me anything. It was a good experience for me." And by just not charging her, she passed my name on to several other clients and I got work. And sometimes you got to give away a little bit to gain.
Yeah.
And
It's important. Yeah.
yeah, it's very important to do that. And some people just need a little thing to do, put an outlet in or whatever. You're not going to charge them. It was a simple job. And so, yeah, all those little handyman things that I love to do and I look forward to it. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't do it. Believe me.
Yeah.
And
It's like the perfect job for you.
it is. And not only that, you get to meet new people.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, you're expanding not only your mental capacity, but you're gaining more friends,
Mm-hmm.
which you can never have enough of. And I love that. That's the part I like the most. And I do love the work, and I do like the people I'm working with.
Yeah.
And the great thing is I am retired, and if I don't, for the last 2 weeks, I haven't done anything because I had a really stressful, hot job that I came back from Wisconsin, and I was burned out. And I just told the people they didn't want me to do anything till the 19th, and I could have found jobs in between then. I just said, "Nah, I'm just going to take it easy and do some things around my house that I need to catch up on."
Yeah.
And it was a good mental break. Then I came out here. First I went and saw Bennett and his kids, and I came and saw you.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I need. A nice break to be around kids and my grandkids, and good time. And I need to spend more time doing that, and that's what I enjoy.
Yeah. So, lastly, I think something that's really unique about you specifically is that I've never seen you get like really upset, like angry.
Hmm.
When like it's kind of ironic because I feel like I'm super stubborn and have like a short, not a short temper, but like I get annoyed pretty easy, like as a human. And I think it's just interesting because you were like so calm
Hmm.
all the time. I don't like, how did you handle that? Like, I would probably was like a pretty intense kid to have to raise.
Not really. It just all depends on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I knew at a very early age, before I was even before I reached puberty, in my own mind, I thought I could be a good dad, and and I believe that I am and was. But I think I saw a lot of that and gained a lot of that again by example, because my mom was in a very stressful situation raising 6 kids pretty much on her own, and she never lost it with us. And it was all part of being a family unit and working together as a team. And she made it seem that way. And I think that's kind of what I did with you guys. Whenever we had a situation where we had to move, we moved a lot, and you guys had to adapt to different schools, and that couldn't have been easy because I never had to do that. But you adapted very well, and I think that comes from the mom and the dad making you understand that you can do it,
Yeah.
you can handle it, and you did. You just, yeah, you showed me. Maybe you had more stress than what I saw going from school to school, but um, I think those situations growing up makes you stronger in life.
Yeah.
And um, I mean, you going off to California to go to college, to me, that was like, wow, she's doing this, and you handled it.
Mhm.
And Bennett going away to college, I think I saw him twice the 4 years that he was up there. But I didn't have any um, moments where I thought that you guys weren't going to be able to handle it. And a lot of that, getting back to the original question, anytime you create chaos by being um, upset or showing that as an adult you can't handle it, um, is rubbed off. The kids see that, and it's not a good thing. Never did I have to look back and say, "Oh, I can't be upset because my kids are going to get upset." It's just in my DNA or whatever that I just didn't get upset about things, because being upset really never helps anything.
Right. Just adds more
And
chaos.
and I can tell you, my brother Eddie, I don't think I've ever seen him mad as an adult, ever. And if you look at his children, they're all really stable kids, because they could see that in their dad too.
Hmm.
And I don't think you gain anything by being upset.
Right. Just escalates the whole problem.
Right. And it's just not, I've been even been told by Tony, she says, and she was married before, any job that I do, she would come up to me and she'd say, "Do you need some help?"
Hmm.
And if I do need help, I'd ask her. And if I don't, I just, no, I'm good. But she was used to having her late husband start a project and get all upset immediately. So she was just in the habit of always coming and trying to help.
Yeah.
And she said, you're the calmest man I think I've ever met when it comes to projects. And I I love getting into a project, and I like getting it done as quick as I can. But I always know that there's always going to be something. Projects are never as easy as they seem, and you always run into something. And that's the time where you kind of separate the men from the boys, where you can just say, okay, this is what I got to do now, and this is how I got to handle it. So it's something I always try to do, is try to be stable and not get upset, because it's never helped.
Yeah.
Never helped in anything.
And I know you've written 3 books.
For
So 4. Okay. 4.
Well, who's
I know.
counting?
Yeah. Details.
Uh,
So that was kind of just like a passion project for you, and like a middle, a midpoint in your life where you just got really into writing, or you always kind of like to write, I guess.
mm-hmm.
And then you wrote 4 books. What's been like the most fulfilling part of that?
um, Putting your voice in words. And there was a lot in my head that I had to get out. And by writing, all 4 of those books that I wrote, I was able to let people understand me and how I feel about things. The last book that I wrote, and that's been 9 years ago, pretty much told people how I feel about spirituality and how I feel about it. And every one of my books, you'll laugh at and you'll cry at, and a lot of that is my life, and it really emptied out my feelings about things, and I feel really fulfilled that I was able to do that. And it's something that not only my grandkids but people in the future can read, and by reading it, they'll understand me.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I mean, you can live your whole life by people not understanding you and only seeing a certain level of you. But if by putting it down on words, your voice on words, really makes people understand. And if you read my books, you'll understand who I am.
Yeah. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for doing this with me, Dad.
Yeah, it was fun.
You didn't know what I was throwing at you, so
No.
got some surprises, but I knew you'd be able to handle it.
Yeah. I'm pretty good on my feet, but I just want to say one thing, that I didn't realize I did all these things for you, and it makes my heart feel good that I've been able to do that for you, and hopefully I can do it for Bennett. And there's one other thing I want to say, that recently I was at a funeral. A young man died. He was 42 years old and he had 3 children. And at the eulogy, his brother was struggling through the eulogy, and I feel it so sad that it comes to that when you have a eulogy for a person that can't really hear you. I mean, maybe they can spiritually, but I think people ought to make an extra effort to do a live eulogy and let people know what they've done in their life for them before it's too late, before they're gone and you're standing at their gravesite and you're telling them all the things that he did for you. So you really need to. And this happened about a month ago. So I've been contacting my friends and people that are close to me, and I don't do it in a text message and I don't do it in email. I do it in person. I let them know how much they mean to me and what they've done for me in my life. And I think that's really important for people to do that.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. So I don't know what else to say except take the time to tell people what they mean to you, because when they're gone, they're gone. All you're carrying on is their memory and what they've done for you, but they need to know. People need to know.
Yep, for sure. Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Dad. I told myself I wasn't going to cry during this. Chris, you can cut that part out.